see, the darkness, it only came because we let the fathers, the monsters, we let them rule. But now, all we have to do is make a breadsheet.
The One Ronin. The One Ronin. That would be at the One Ronin 1. That's TheOneRonin 1, as in the first number and all the numbers. Numeral 1 is what I mean by that. Maybe, I don't know if I said that right. The One Ronin. He's a good Twitter peep, good Twitter fiend at TheOneRonin 1, as in the first one is the word 1, but then the second one is the actual number or numeral 1. Bit confusing, but he's the One Ronin 1 on Twitter. Great engager man of the content and such as that. I believe he's also a veteran and a cool leftist bruh. He's one of those cool veterans who went to war and saw how messed up it was, so he acknowledged the reality that he and his friends were just kids when they joined, so it's really not all that bad, and, they no sense in feeling any shame about it. Actually, I was talking to my friend Whit recently, and I was kind of texting back and forth with him. He told me he's been catching up on Breadsheet episodes, and that I called his ass out on an episode, saying that he was in punk bands with me in high school, and he wound up joining the military. But I should have expounded upon. I remember listening back to that and thinking like, I hope Whit or somebody like one of my friends who joined the military doesn't hear this and think I'm like being mean about it or anything. I mean, we're just kids. People join the military, and mixed feelings. I'm from a military family, and my dad fought in Vietnam, and every male member of my family, like before me or before my dad's generation and before were in the military. And I have mad respect for people who have the courage to actually go put themselves in the shit, and also just the self-discipline that it would take to just be in the military and not get friggin' kicked out like I most definitely would pretty shortly after joining, I would think. And, I've always kind of wanted to go to, see if I could do boot camp or something, just to see if I could actually do it. I probably couldn't, though. I'm a total wimp. But yeah, no shade on people who have joined the military. I definitely have my opinions on the wars and such that we fight in, but to each his or her own. I don't think it makes you a bad person or anything like that. And I find it kind of weird when people get they get really offended if I start talking about, my problems with the U.S. empire and U.S. imperialism, and how I don't think we've really fought a justified war, except maybe the very arguable ones like World War II, in a very long time. And so if any war can be ultimately justified, who knows? Maybe the right thing is just to let yourself get killed. But anyway, or let yourself get conquered or invaded or whatever, and not fight back. Turn the other cheek, as our good friend JC once said. That's Jesus Christ I'm talking about. But yeah, so the One Ronin, I think he's one of those cool veterans who is a leftist, who, when people in the military tend to be very conservative and right-wing. So, no shade. Go follow the One Ronin on Twitter, or at the One Ronin 1 on Twitter. If you think you can handle it, if you think you can handle his hot takes, because they are hot as fire, sizzling indeed. And why don't you give yourself a big old pat on the head for making it to episode 18 of this show? This podcast. I think this is episode 18. It's called Breadsheet with me, Hoss Bossman. Breadsheet with me, Hoss Bossman. Today's episode of Breadsheet is very special because it is an interview with my good old buddy Lloyd. He is a great musician and awesome brain haver whom I went to Young Harris College up in the northernmost mountains of northeast Georgia with. It's an amazing place that I really miss. And Lloyd has been out in Asia teaching English for the past several years. He was in India for a while and is now in Beijing, as we talk about in this chat. Very cool chat that you should stick around for because it's tight. He's a truly great dude. This conversation with him is really fascinating and fun. So I'm actually going to make this intro short, I promise. But before I get to talking politics and art and pop culture and Chinese capitalism or capitanoism with my dear friend Lloyd Handy, also known as DJ Boring. Not the newer British guy, but the OG DJ Boring. British guy stole the name. You can find and should find on BANDCAMP and SOUNDCLOUD. He's the real DJ Boring with the Pikachu profile pic. And here's some of his music. Pretty awesome stuff, right? Well, go check him out at BANDCAMP at djboring.bandcamp.com. I think that's his preferred method. And at MIXCLOUD at mixcloud.com/djboring. All his links are in this episode's description as well, per always with all the guests. And make sure you stick around to the end of my chat with him to hear a full song from him as well. But first, just a pinch of housekeeping before I drop Lloyd's original theme song I made for him. By the way, these original themes that I make are gifts to my guests. So they are free, encouraged indeed, to use them in their own content or whatever. Not to put any pressure on anyone to use them or anything, but anyhow, I have posted some new videos on the Hoss Bossman YouTube channel at bit.ly/HossTube. There's a fun little breakdown of just how much nonsense is in PragerU's recent lazy-ass video about Martin Luther King Jr. They're getting lazier and lazier, but that's with Whilwit. That's that video I made in response has done really well in the views category, as well as I did a little experiment with the audio of my dramatic reading of Eugene Debs' statement to the court from last week's episode of Breadsheet. Really happy with how that turned out. I made like a weird, disorienting electronic piece of music to intro it and go up underneath it. And those words from him, that statement to the court, if you tuned in last week, you already know, but you should listen to it again. It's got a little different feel with that ethereal music under it, but just a beautiful, poetic, compelling defense of socialism and leftist politics that I think is very hard to argue with or argue against. That'd be a good one, I think, to post on Facebook and or share with conservative or anti-left people in your life, I'd say. That's the most recent video, as of this recording, on the Hoss Bossman YouTube channel called Socialist Icon Eugene Debs 1918 Statement to the Court or something like that. Really enjoying making these video essays almost as much as I'm enjoying producing this podcast. So check that out. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all the nice YouTube things that everybody with a YouTube channel asks you to do, much to your annoyance, I'm sure. Also, I'm scheduling more interviews and already have one in the can, as we say in the industry. And that's amazingly exciting because that is an interview with the great Chris Freeman, LGBTQ plus icon and bassist/co-lead singer of Pansy Division. If you are unfamiliar with them, I first learned of them on a Green Day Behind the Music episode, I believe. They went on Green Day's first big tour as their opener after Green Day had been signed and gotten super famous. It's a very cool story there, which we dive into. But basically, Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day wanted to kind of make a political statement by having his friends, Pansy Division, who are very openly gay, which in the early 90s, that was not the safest thing to be and really took a lot of cojones to be openly gay. They broke down a lot of barriers and such, and The Green Day wanted to bring those guys with them, both because they're an awesome band and also, because it was, I think, a political statement in and of itself to, be in support openly of this openly gay band. That's very exciting. We had an awesome conversation. Pansy Division is sort of a gay pop punk, pop rockish sort of punk rockish band. They're sort of like punk, sort of in the vein of like Ramones. If you ever heard like Mr. T Experience from the early 90s, they're contemporaries of theirs and had kind of a similar sound, the sort of pop rock punkish sort of thing, Lookout Records sound, which I think a handful of bands had. Like I said, they really broke down a lot of barriers, being openly gay in an atmosphere that was largely hostile to that, and writing super graphic songs about gay sex, just really having like legit gay pride. And they're also just great songwriters with a super catchy catalog. There's a great Best of Pansy Division album on Apple Music, and it's probably on Spotify and stuff. All their albums are great, but that Best of thing, and there's probably a lot of playlists and stuff with them on them. That would be a great introduction to them if you are unfamiliar with their music. There's also a documentary about them that's free on YouTube called Pansy Division: Life in a Gay Rock Band, I believe. You should definitely check that out. My buddy Max and I are big fans of theirs and always wanted to cover their Christmas song, Homo Christmas, and we probably will at some point. Maybe this Christmas. We'll, Christmas 2021. Look out for a cover of Homo Christmas. But Mr. Freeman was super sweet and forthcoming and forgiving of the fact that I was pretty starstruck and nervous. So get stoked for that interview. That's going to be a week from today coming out. Also, I have scheduled Ben Burgess's second Breadsheet appearance for like mid-February, early to mid-February. I'm nailing down a date with the great Robbie Martin and more stuff. Want to say that I'm super proud and happy because my butta bean, my GFF, my girlfriend for life, she is a real life lawyer now. She started a new gig as a juvenile public defender. So we are moving a few hours away so she can start that job, and I just could not be prouder and more excited about starting this new chapter in our life together. But we're getting up real early to drive to that new town and look at new places to live tomorrow, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up this intro so I can get this episode out in time and maybe get a little bit of sleep so I can work on the score for my friend Tyler's short film that I'm working on when I'm riding in the car tomorrow. Another thing that's also going pretty interestingly and cool and fun. First time I've ever scored a short film. That'll be coming out, and of course I'll tell you all about that when that finally gets released. Release schedule. I'm going to release that next episode, the interview with Chris Freeman, 1 week from today. And there's some political stuff I want to talk about, the minimum wage debate, have some brain thoughts on that, and also the Keystone Pipeline shutting down. Got to say that Joe Biden is surprising me by shutting down the Keystone Pipeline and also saying that he's going to stop funding for private prisons, which I'll believe it when I see it. But, he's obviously responsible for a whole lot of people being in prison wrongfully to this day. And maybe in his old age, he is sort of saying, screw it, and not worrying about the special interests and actually doing the right thing and going to try to at least start reversing some of the massive amount of damage that he did with that 94 crime bill that he wrote and is like super draconian and really messed up and has really made the United States a horrible place in a lot of ways. And I mean, I think history will not look kindly upon that. So maybe if he undoes some of that damage, maybe he's thinking more about his legacy now. Because, private prisons shouldn't be a thing to begin with, and the amount of people we have in prison, as I think I mentioned in this interview with Lloyd, we have like 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners, and have some thoughts on the Keystone Pipeline as well. I will say it sucks that Some people are losing their jobs because that's closing down, but the Keystone Pipeline should never have been open in the first place. I think we should have listened to the, never mind the environmental impact and all that, but the indigenous people who did not want it built on their land and damaging their land, we should have kind of listened to them to begin with. And sucks that some people are going to lose their jobs, but climate change is real, and we have to at some point start taking steps to try and do something, mitigate the damage that is definitely at this point going to do some of. But I will say this: if it is not coupled with his closing of the Keystone Pipeline, if that is not coupled with moonshot New Deal level action to create new jobs and create more opportunities and, in green energy, we should have been transitioning into a, renewable resource-based economy a long time ago. But, this is not the Twitter skinny here, but I'm just going to look up real quick a tweet that I made that I think I put it the way that I wanted to put it. So instead of, rambling on and just trying to get my brain thoughts all organized here, here's what I said. I said, make work jobs are just fine when my tax dollars are funding the manufacture of military arms to be shipped overseas and blown up. But when those same tax dollars are going toward training unemployed people to perform COVID tests or build windmills, it's communism and thus evil. I think that sums it up pretty well. We should be, creating make work jobs, just like our military industrial complex is basically a jobs program. How about instead of having a jobs program funded by the federal government and our tax dollars that is funding creating bombs and missiles and stuff to be shipped overseas and exploded so that people can be murdered by our government in our name, maybe we should be creating make work jobs, building, solar panels and windmills and stuff, performing COVID tests and, doing things that are actually helpful to people and aren't just murdering innocent people abroad. I don't know. I think that would be nice. And the other thing, this isn't Hoss Recommends, but I am going to recommend something, and I am Hoss, so I guess it kind of is. But just going to say real quick, Second Thought, which is a great YouTube channel that does awesome video essays that are very professional looking, even though I think it is just a one-man operation. They're way more professional looking than mine, and he obviously puts a lot of research into those videos, and he just put one out on the minimum wage, and I'm going to try to memorize everything in that video because it is the most compelling, best argument for raising the minimum wage I have seen, articulated super well, and definitely look that up. That's Second Thought on the minimum wage debate, most recent video as of right now, and definitely share that on social media and stuff. And if you're having an argument with somebody about minimum wage and they're saying it shouldn't be raised because it's going to destroy businesses or whatever, definitely send them that video or send them toward that video. Okay, let's get moving. And with only a slight amount of further ado, I'm going to run through my 2 mini plugs as quickly as I can. My username is Hoss_Bossman on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. Please follow me on those places, as well as on Patreon. That's at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman. I released a new album in an attempt to raise money to buy Crimbus gifts a little while back, but now it's just an attempt to buy anything because I still don't have a job. So, I don't know why I brought up the Christmas gifts thing because, I just need money in general. So it's awesome. I'm real happy with it. It's 29 tracks for $7 and it's got a bunch of the music from this show on it that I made, specifically for the show, theme music and stuff. It's got Jordan Holmes' original theme song, Investigate Joe Rogan's original theme song, Ash's Cat, David Griscom, and let's see, Rachel Corky Shank. And that's all the music I've made for this podcast so far for the previous 17 episodes, all in 14 episodes before that, I think. But all in one convenient place and all remastered and different versions. Great to listen to intently or to study to or read to. It's a great way to support my ability to eat food and get something tangible in return for it. The amazing Breadsheet music that you know and love. That's at hossbossman.bandcamp.com. No underscore in that. hossbossman.bandcamp.com. The Hoss Bossman album, The Sounds of Breadsheet, is what that's called. You can also support me by getting some of my serious quote-unquote music that's with the on Bandcamp, THEKMACKS.com, sort of an alt country, folk punk kind of sound. Also visit bit.ly/Hoss2 for the Hoss Bossman YouTube channel. Music, adorable vids, music videos of my mascot / best lil pal, Fancy LaRue. I have 3 supporters on Patreon right now. By the way, thank you very much to Sansi, Cedric, and Amanda, my 3 small but mighty crew of Patreon supporters. I really appreciate it. You have absolutely no idea how much it means to me to know that I have some support from y'all out there. And find all that fun stuff at www.hoss.fun. Oh yeah, bit.ly/callhoss. You can leave me a message there and I'll probably play it on the show as long as it isn't racist. But yeah, www.hoss.fun. You can find all that stuff. Alrighty, folks. I guess without any further ado, now stick around for my awesome interview with the great Lloyd Handy, also known as DJ Boring. That's DJ Boring with the Pikachu avatar on Bandcamp. And all the other links, which you can find in the description of this show. This is my original theme song I made for him, and it is called Dark Lloyd.
Immense deja vu, so you're gonna kill your children for communism. You're gonna kill your children for communism. That is all unified by this one. It's like it's built on a bunch of like Indian graves or something. That is all unified by this one. The magic, sexy rhythm. Sexy rhythm. It's like it's built on a bunch of like Indian graves or something. You're gonna kill your children for communism. You're gonna kill your children for communism.
Yo, are you admitted?
Yo, I am admitted. What's up, Hoss?
How's it going, buddy?
Hey, good. Sorry, this is the morning in my office. The light's really aggressive. It's just gonna be like blasting me in the face right here. So. Oh,
dude, hopefully this doesn't mess anything up but I've got the lighting in this room is like horrible. So it's like a really high ceiling. It's like a workout room that never gets used for anything other than me recording in it. So I've got these 3 LED lights, and then my girlfriend for Christmas got me these lights that are actually made, like the LED lights I got are just like cheap, like $7 lamps from Target. Yeah. But she got me these things that like plug into USB that are actual like kind of mini studio lights that made
for like video lighting and stuff. A little functional thing contributing to your craft.
Yeah, I think the next thing I'm gonna get is a green screen, like just a green sheet to hang behind me, so I can like do fun weird stuff with that.
Yeah, you need some like explosions and spinning fancies going in the background.
Yeah, kind of stuff. I mean, really just a fancy hold on, there we go. Okay, I think just like something like a big mural with that was my girlfriend wanted to get me like a kind of tapestry thing that had like a big something like a logo on it or something, like maybe just a picture of Fancy, which I think would be pretty perfect. But so how's life in Beijing?
Yeah, it's all right. I want to say it's good, but just in the past, this is great. It's like it's immense deja vu. So we went on our winter break about 2 weeks ago from school, and work. And when we started, it was like, yay. And we can't travel. Like, we're not allowed to travel anywhere to control Corona, but there were 0 cases in Beijing. I mean, like, I did a big DJ set about a week and a half ago, and then another one on Christmas Eve. And, everything was fun. And then cases started popping up. So like for the first time since like March, there's actual like cases of coronavirus in Beijing. So we're a little bit nervous, but they're doing, they do like crazy contact tracing and testing here. So they'll probably get it under control pretty fast. But anyway, the point of all that is to say it's no longer perfect here, but yeah, we're doing all right.
I mean, I'm sure you've, heard about how things are going here in the States. We've got 25% of the world's cases in like 4% of the world's population, I think, which is great.
Yeah.
That 25 to 5 ratio, we get that a lot. And because it's like the US is responsible for like 25% of the Earth's greenhouse gases, I think, or maybe just like air pollution in general. And also there's
it's like prisoners, executions,
like
all that stuff.
The same. That's like some kind of weird, like evil golden ratio or something. I don't know. Always winds up.
It's like it's built on a bunch of like Indian graves or something.
Yeah. It's like, it's like original sin, we've got, we've got that and slavery. So we've got like, extra bad original too.
So much haunting, so much curses.
This whole bit is kind of boring. We just talk about different platforms for recording remote interviews. Then I bring up that I'm sponsored by the Anchor podcast publishing platform.
Yes, and sponsoring Breadsheet.
Yes, the one and hopefully only ever sponsor. I figure, if I'm using a free service, I might as well give them a plug. And I've made like, I think now like $16 off of that ad with the
hell yeah
3 months I've been running it. But
there you go.
It ain't nothing. But yeah, that John and Brandon and I and Samuel, we've been, going back and forth. Well, since forever, basically since, we were in Young Harris, we've always been like, we had all these ideas, like want to do this sketch and that video. And we had at Young Harris, we wanted to do a radio show, like at the Young Harris radio station. And they had that
piddly radio station.
Yeah. Like we had all these ideas for stuff to do, but like never really followed through with it other than like a few videos and stuff. And those guys are it's hard to like get them all on the same page sometimes, but
I was about to ask, how are they doing? Everybody.
I think Brandon and John live together, so that's convenient and good. But we did a call a couple weeks ago where I was like, okay, like we were all kind of texting with each other and was like, we need to try like just recording some stuff and see if we can put it out as a podcast. And I finally got them all together on like a 4-way FaceTime, and we were all just like fucking laughing hysterically, and just all 4 of us in it. It was like there was never like a quiet moment, any silence or anything. Like this would be so fucking easy to just like record this once a week and just put it up, not to edit it or anything.
Yeah.
Unless we like say something about the voices in our head that are telling us to kill the president or whatever.
Right. But even then you're white, so they would do a checkup and then just leave and not do anything about it.
Yeah. It would be just
like that guy in Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. The meme about the like, shades of like the whiter someone is, the more likely it is to be mental health,
Yeah. That's cool. Keeping in touch with them.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll be like actually putting out something, once but the reason I brought that up is we are going to try to record it because like Zoom, you can only record 2 people at once with the free version. Then you have to get like the paid version to do like big groups. But like apparently Discord, you can do it. You can record big groups for free. So we're going to try doing that, but I don't really know how well that works. And I don't even know if y'all is Discord used at all in China? Do you even know about it?
I haven't used, I got an invitation to a thing, and I think I signed up once, and I've never used it. I gather that it's a popular, thing, but I don't use it.
There's just so much shit. Like I have so many different like social media type apps and stuff that I have accounts on, and I don't see how. I mean, I guess like back in the day, like when we were doing the KMAX, like 10 years ago, it was pretty easy. Not easy. It was still like a lot of work to like keep up with all just Facebook and Twitter. And I guess, I don't know, I think that was like pretty much, keeping like,
but there was like some impact back then.
Yeah. Now it's like, I don't know, you have to pay to like have people see any of your shit on, especially Facebook, but Facebook is a complete like cesspool anyway. So,
Yeah. It's true though. It's just a different landscape now. Like, just the number of social media platforms and the saturation and the lack of impact. And
I'm trying to promote the podcasts and like YouTube videos and stuff. And it's like, okay, I have every time I post something new, I have this list that's literally like a whole work day of me just like going through to Reddit and Discord and all these different rooms and boards and stuff, just like to post links to stuff. And I don't know, maybe after a while, you don't have to do that quite as much once you kind of have more of an organic growth, but I'm still very much in the phase of like having to tell everybody when I put something out. So,
well, at least you have it sounds like you've at least got some really methodical, diligent kind of way of doing it. So you're doing it well, I guess it is to say. I
mean, yeah, trying to, like I don't have a job right now. So that makes it a lot easier not having a job, but hopefully that'll also change. My girlfriend just passed the bar or found out she passed the bar and got a job down in Georgia. So we're going to be moving down there in a few months.
Okay. Wow.
And apparently that's like surrounded by, as far as like education goes, like there's like a lot of need in that area because like nobody wants to live there. So maybe I'll be able to get a job down there.
I'm like mentally trying to be like, hey, where is that? That's south of Young Harris, I bet.
Way south. Yeah, it's like south of Atlanta.
The only connection I have is do you remember Goodlet from Young Harris? Like my buddy, we used to run around, and then at UGA, obviously he lives in Georgia now, which is way down there. Like it's probably a tiny town, but it's like closer to Florida than it is to Georgia, kind of a thing, but it's in that kind of area. And he's I guess his family moved down there, but he's like doing X-ray tech. He's an X-ray tech, which means he got the COVID vaccine because he's just been X-raying COVID patients for the past like 7 months or whatever.
Yeah, it's I've played a show or two in Albany, I think, and so at least apparently there's like places where bands go sometimes. So
yeah,
that's something, I guess. But
something,
since the pandemic started, I've gotten so used to just like not going anywhere or doing anything. Right. The idea of like living somewhere where there's not really much going on doesn't bother me as much as it would have like a year ago.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's funny. A good thing, but
well, I wonder if that's probably a bigger effect too. Like I know that even though we're still very much right in the smack middle of this pandemic, I wonder how much people are starting to reflect and think about those things that we were thinking in the early days of it. Like, it's good to be slowing our lives down and to be reevaluating, and looking at like pollution output having slowed down and stuff like that. And all those kind of things. Like, I wonder how much other people are going to be thinking that same thing. Just like, it's time to move to fucking Alaska and just live 500 miles from anybody or something like that.
Yeah. The whole pollution thing, like that, and along with just like how, not mainly for the pollution element, but also, it's just like, aren't companies like going to be realizing that they're wasting money on floor space in office buildings when so much of this stuff can be done from home now? And it's like, maybe the sort of the kick that was needed for like finally a lot of these companies that are kind of like stuck in the past to finally be like, okay, we can just go mostly online. So
and then you have to have a good internet infrastructure. You have to like actually give a fuck about that. I don't know. I can't remember. You have to bleep things out on this, or
I don't have to. I usually will like toward the beginning will like bleep a few things out, but then like of me speaking but that's mainly because I still want to like get teaching jobs possibly. So, and
I gotcha
down here in the South, mainly I do it until I'm not having fun with it anymore. Like I'll bleep things using like various different sound effects. Past that point, hopefully they'll just like listen for 10 minutes and be like, okay,
you get the idea.
Yeah. So for listeners of Breadsheet, this is my friend Lloyd. We've known each other a long time. Could you like, I don't know, introduce yourself and just kind of talk about like what you're doing in Beijing and what you've been doing there?
Yeah. So I am a teacher. I teach 8th grade humanities. Recently I had a little bit of switch up, but I've been a teacher for about 8 years, more or less now. We went to college together in the early days, like freshman, sophomore year. And then the rest of my college career was a little tumultuous, but then graduated from UGA in Athens. Did you go to UGA as well, or you went to?
Yeah, I was. There was we had some overlap there. Like I went straight to UGA after Young Harris, and then I think I remember seeing you there from time to time, but we didn't really ever hang out when I was living there. But yeah,
it was a big pond.
It very much so. I used to, go by Goodlet's house from time to time. I think I saw you there a few times, and that was pretty much mostly it, probably.
Okay, kind of thought so.
Yeah.
Anyway, and clap marker.
Oh yeah.
So finished. So I did my degree in English Lit at UGA, which is functionally useless. But I basically just wanted to be a teacher, but didn't have the trajectory coming out of that degree exactly. So I basically moved to Asheville, North Carolina for a few years after I graduated from UGA and couldn't find a job in Athens. I moved to Asheville, and I was actually working as like at an entrepreneurial little small business deal in Asheville, which was pretty lucky in that like I had some disposable income and it was an interesting job. And I was working with my best friend now who has started that and since many other companies. So I was there for a couple of years, and then I met my future wife there, and she was kind of already in the process of moving to India, moving to New Delhi, because she was a teacher and she had accepted a job to teach at an international school in India. So we had been dating for a while, and then when she moved to India, I stayed in Asheville for another year, but we kept in touch and kind of just wanted to see how it went and decided that we liked each other. So I moved to India after that first year, and I started my master's degree in teaching online, my master's degree in education while I was there. And I did all my like student teaching and did a lot of sub work and practicum and stuff like that at that school, the American Embassy School in New Delhi, India. And so was there for 2 years. And then when I finished my master's and had all the necessary licensure and stuff like that to actually start teaching proper, they didn't have a job for me there. So we kind of like cast our net to the world. And this is about 6 years ago. And what we came up with was Beijing, because my wife, who has tons of great experience and is now even stronger teacher than ever, she got a job at a kind of a top tier school here in Beijing. And I was able to get a job at another school that was not exactly top tier or anything like that. And so I started there, and I'm now on my third school in Beijing. So I managed to do 1 year at like a terrible starter school kind of situation. I rode the subway for like 2 hours every day. It was one of those kind of lives. And then I worked at a mid-tier school for 2 years. And then really it's been meteoric when I think about it, because now I'm at a major like top tier international school. One could argue it might be one of the best paying teaching jobs in the world. Like you can't really make a lot more than what we're making at this school, just to give some perspective. And I was able to like climb through those really fast. But so I've been there for 3 years, and it's our 6th year in China and in Beijing. And as far as the pandemic goes, they were able to control it here in Beijing such that this school year, 2020 to 2021, we had been completely in person with no cases in the city since school started. And yet there seem to have popped up a couple cases. So we don't know what's going to happen from January 4th when we go back to work. But that is where we are now. That is my career history. Truncated life story. I didn't really know all the details of that. I just remember like I remember talking to you when you were in India for a little bit, and then you wound up in Beijing, and I kind of didn't know if you had been sort of going back and forth or different countries and stuff. So you've been in Beijing for 6 years? So this is our 6th year here. Okay. I guess it could look confusing because we did a lot of traveling before the pandemic. Like I couldn't give a number at this point, but we obviously we just voraciously traveled as much as we could. That's kind of like one of the things this international teaching lifestyle affords. So we were doing a lot of traveling. A year ago at this time, we were in Sri Lanka, and it was the first time we'd been there, which was funny because we lived in India for a few years, but we never made it down to Sri Lanka. But we were there for Christmas of last year, and that was the last time that I traveled. But yeah, so that's what we've been doing. Probably, I guess it also bears mentioning, my hobby, of course, I'm a DJ and music producer. I dabble with that stuff. I've been doing that for a while.
Well, I mean, that was the main reason I kind of thought like, oh yeah, Lloyd would be like a really good fit for the show because you did that a couple years ago, that TEDx talk, which multiculturalism and electronic music. And I want to ask you like a couple of things about we'll get to the art and politics thing in a second, but I kind of want to, I know this is like kind of broad questioning here, but did you ever have like interest in living in China before you kind of were like, well, guess this is where we're going now?
Yeah, no, not at all. I don't think it really registered to me at all to even consider it. Like, I don't know what I may have thought about China. Obviously like my knowledge about it has changed tremendously. But when we lived in India, I went to, we traveled around, we went to different countries. Like I went to some places in Europe, we went to Thailand, different places in Southeast Asia and stuff. But I went to but Delhi was like our main reference, right? Like I lived in India, and India is pretty crazy. I don't know how much I really need to say about that, but India is a pretty wild place. But I went to this job fair, like where I was applying for the job that I got in Beijing was in Hong Kong. So I went to Hong Kong, and it was the first time that I had really like been in any of the, like, I guess the triumvirate of like Japan or China or Korea. And I went to Hong Kong, and I was just like, this is amazing. Like, wow, like this place is so cool, especially compared to Delhi. It was like I had, just one point of reference, and I was like, this is so awesome. All the people are smiling. It's really cool and urban and hip. And the pollution was a little bit bad, I think, when I was there. But like India, the pollution was so much worse, so it didn't matter. And so I was like, this is going to be awesome when we moved to Beijing. And then people were like, Lloyd, Hong Kong is not Beijing. Very different. And they were right. Like people smiled in Hong Kong. People don't smile in Beijing. It's very different. But yeah, it didn't register at all. It just was an opportunity thing. And I think that's a broader point, I think, about China. Like there's almost like right now or in the recent past is almost like a gold rush of just like employment in China. Like there was a point where if you were a foreign expert, you could basically, or you can just do the teaching unicorn English weekend academy, blah, blah, blah. And like, if you're doing nothing, you can teach English in China or something like that. That was a thing. I don't know how much the pandemic has changed stuff like that. But yeah, it was just a purely opportunistic thing. And I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, same thing for me. I was only in China for like 6 months, just did like one little like teaching contract there.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was in Shanghai and didn't really do any traveling around the region. But back in 2012, I got like an opportunity to just do a summer of teaching SAT prep and like academic English. So it was basically like a middle school level, like language arts class I was teaching in Taipei. And that I kind of had a similar sort of experience. Taiwan is awesome, and the people are so friendly and nice, and it is like very urban and like comfortable. At least in Taipei, where I was most of the time I was there, and like comfortable for an English speaker. Most of the people speak English, which I guess is probably the case also in Hong Kong, or at least a little bit.
Probably more so in Hong Kong, not in the mainland, but yeah.
That was so when I got it, I had never really had much interest in going to China other than for like, as like a just tourists looking at historical stuff. And there's still a lot of historical stuff in China, but like, I didn't realize, when I was in Taiwan, I, would like this, my subway stop was like, I would get off in this like 1,500-year-old Buddhist temple, and there's like just all this like really, really old history stuff. And I'm just such a sucker for that kind of thing. Like that's the main I haven't done really much traveling in my life, but like
in Taiwan.
Yeah. And Taiwan is like that, the main reason, I've never been to Europe, but like I would love to go to Italy to just like, put my hands on some like really old buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah, the antiquity.
Yeah. I kind of just assumed like China would be the same way and didn't really take into account or, I still don't really know that much about China, as most Westerners don't, but or really much of anything about history, period. But, especially anything besides American history. But I didn't realize that like the communist revolution kind of got rid of a lot of the cool historical shit that was in China. And so I was a little bit disappointed at that. It's not all gone, but
you could put that number at like 99% though, like so much, like it's kind of mind blowing, really. Like just going around in a taxi around Beijing and just looking and being like, all this stuff was built since the 60s, like nothing, like this is a millennia old city and nothing remains that was original almost. Like there've been reconstructions of some old things, but there's hardly anything original. I think there's like a tiny bit of what was what the neighborhoods, I guess, or what the city used to be constructed as are what are now called hutongs. And that means like alleyway. They have like some of the original kind of like small, buildings and courtyards and tight alleyways and stuff like that. That looks more like a typical, like what you would imagine, like ancient China looking like in the city. A little bit of those. And there's like one temple that's original, the Lama temple. That's a few hundred years old, but almost everything else that's here has been reconstructed since being burned or whatever, or it's just not there, or there's just like apartment blocks and skyscrapers where there used to be stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as a leftist, which I guess was that the type, like politically, probably what you would say you are, leftist. For a long time, I always thought progressive was the title, but then I sort of just got a better idea of like how wide the spectrum really is, and also leftist just sounds way fucking cooler than progressive. So
especially I think because what we as leftists, what we're battling right now is like centrism, right? Like that's the big problem. It's like right now, like as far as I see, it's just like there's this huge problem of not being able to make progress because not only are we battling like actual like conservatism, but also like centrism. So it's like because centrism kind of umbrellas itself over like progressive, liberal, neoliberalism and stuff like that. Yeah, it takes a spicier term. We have to be like, look, I'm a leftist. That's it, or something like that.
Yeah, leftist, it's socialist. I mean, really, leftist is a dirty word in the U.S. too, but obviously, socialist and communist are like just beyond the pale.
Anathema.
But I mean, I was working on a script for a video that I'm doing about all the ads. I thought people might be interested in seeing some of the ads that we're seeing here in Georgia. I mean, we are just getting inundated with ads right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're just, the red baiting is like so crazy with like them talking about, obviously like, I mean, John Ossoff is, I think he's like a center, just dead center progressive. Yeah,
of course. Like he's not,
and then, but Warnock, those are the really like, lots of racial undertones and like all the, radical Marxists using a lot of language like that to describe him. And I've just like, before I got your message on Twitter, I was reading some pretty interesting stuff from Kelly Loeffler's the person who's running against him, her website that was like this whole page called like Marxist Warnock or something. And even the stuff that she's been, all of her campaign ads are like radical Raphael Warnock is has sympathetic to Marxism and has spoken well of Marxism in the past. And then you actually look at like the examples that she has of that, and they are so fucking weak. Like it's like all this really
it's just lies. It's classic red baiting, just making up actual lies to just be like, they're gonna kill your children for communism. Like it's like 100% lies.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, I as a leftist, how do you kind of look at the Chinese brand of communism, which I would call maybe like state capitalism was really probably a more accurate term for it now. But like, how do you sort of, I just could give you like a little anecdote of like, I when I was in China, the culture shock of like, lack of respect for personal space was a big one. And, there's all kinds of things, but also like a lot of things that I think in trying to be an open-minded person, I tried not to interpret some of the stuff as like that we would see as rude here in the US as just being like, that's just how they do things there. And I don't think they mean anything by it. But, like you said, when I was coming back from Taiwan, I remember I just was in the Guangzhou airport for like, a 5-hour layover. And it was the difference between just like, it's the same people, just like Han Chinese mostly.
Right.
But like just the difference between like the atmosphere and like the people, not a lot of smiling and happiness and friendliness and stuff. And so that was like my first taste of China. And then, I came to sort of understand, there's some of this is like cultural differences and that's totally fine. But also like, I remember one person, my boss at the school I was working at, explained to me, his explanation was like, a lot of these people grew up either during like Maoist China or like their parents did. And they were raised with this attitude of like, if you don't take something, you don't get it because like resources were so scarce during that time.
Yeah, exactly.
So you would say that seems like kind of maybe an accurate.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like I probably don't have like a super deep understanding as I could have, or maybe it's impossible, I don't know, hermeneutical or something, but, I would say that, a lot of the things you can kind of look at some of those things in the cultural background and stuff like I remember one time the personal space and like kind of what we would take for privacy standards aren't the same because I remember someone explained it to me, or a couple times it's been explained to me in different ways by people, Chinese people, that like in village life, right? It's all about like village life because everything was just village life for so long. Basically, everyone is looking out for each other. Like in the village, everyone is looking over your shoulder while you're like writing a letter because they want to make sure that you're gonna do the best you can, or they're looking out for your success, or they want to help you or whatever. So like, yes, there's the kind of like crowding and lack of like, I don't know, respect for privacy or like something like that. I think there's something to that about like the village life background. And then yes, too, as far as like the resources go, like I remember I learned one time about like woks, right? The big like metal wok cooking pans that like they used to. It's like something about the style of cooking has to do with the fact that there was only one for like multiple families, so they would just have to share it, and they would cook everything in it or something like that. And you had to like take what you could get, and that scarcity during some of those tumultuous years really did inform a lot of like culture and stuff like that. It's still hard, like it's never easy. I think I'm actually at the point where I'm getting it both ways. Like I get pretty good culture shock when I go back to America in normal times. Like I go back to America and I'm a little bit like off put by everything. But I'm off put by culture here that I don't understand. But yeah, it's never easy, but there is some interesting kind of background for that stuff.
Yeah. And as as a like the original question I had, just so many like little things that like, splinter off in this. And when I was thinking about like what we could talk about, I just the China thing is like so huge. Maybe we could like, have a more focused conversation about specific stuff at some point. But like how, broadly speaking, how do you kind of look at the Chinese brand of communism besides it just being a more like collectivist culture, I guess? Yeah.
So let's see. So my impression about that is that it's not really it's more like what I think you said, like capitalist, like it's like a state, it's really like extremely capitalist. The only like aspect really that I still see is very like sparse. Obviously like it's a one party system, and all that entails. It's just, in that sense, it's just I don't know. I'm trying to think like what I can say, or I don't know if I should be cautious about what I talk about or whatever, but it's just like autocratic, right? It's just like, it's a one party like autocracy. And then the manifestation is like, I mean, what do they call it? Capitalism with Chinese characteristics, right? It's capitalism, but there's still some strings. I think at the end of the day, there's like pretty strong strings on things. So it's basically free market capitalist to a degree, probably, but a pretty far one. So yeah, I think that there's some things that are still in place that ensure, I'll use like the term social security, in the broad sense, not in the sense of the American retirement system, but like there's still things that ensure the security of people's lives and livelihood and stuff like that, like medicine and education and things like that. But they're still even a little bit, I think I see, or I hear about some of the problems with the system, that it's like socialized and that people are kind of bound to where they're born. So if you're born in Beijing, you have a way better shot at everything than someone who's born basically anywhere else, because of the way that education and things like that are kind of like doled out based on your birthplace or residence or stuff like that. But yeah, it's kind of obscure. Like I don't see hardly any remnant of actual like socialism here. It's hard to see, actually.
And that, yeah, I had, a very similar experience. It felt kind of, I didn't get the feeling of like the authoritarian oppressiveness that so often we sort of like the image of China that we have from here.
Right.
Obviously, there's like lots of stuff about
that's what they want you to. That's how they want you to feel.
Yes. Yeah. No. And I mean, and at that, like, I hesitate to really defend China, or like, I don't know. I don't really know how to put it, because it's like, you'll get accused of engaging in like apologia for if you start to talk about how like, China, obviously there's a lot of things they do that we as Americans with our many, attitudes like disagree with and see differently. But like, you can't really deny that like China has progressed at a rate like so much faster than any other country in history besides maybe the Soviet Union.
Right.
And, or, I'd say faster than things have gone better for China than they went for the Soviet Union ultimately. But like, as far as like, that both of them, in both cases, Soviet Union and China, you have this situation of like a very poor country with tons and tons of people, like the vast majority of people living in poverty. And then like, through after a communist revolution, that being turned around like incredibly fast, in a very impressive way. And I don't know, I feel like, in the United States, everything is filtered through a pro-capitalist, anti-leftist, anti-socialist lens, and I'd like to be able to look, like adults, like look at what the Soviet Union or China has achieved and see how they did that, and how maybe we can adapt that same sort of thing, but with our own values.
Of course,
it's
just interesting. It's true, because there really is like. Like the longer I'm here, the more that I kind of like see, or I try to, and I think I see kind of all sides, as it were, like, because there's a lot of things that I can be kind of like critical of, for sure. And the fact that I don't even feel comfortable talking about those things until maybe I'm well and away from here is one thing. But there's also a lot that like, I'm just like, man, people in America, they do not get it at all. They don't understand, and like, they're wrong and stuff. Like, I think the pandemic is a great example. Like, I had a friend who like, I've actually been kind of like surprised, because when I first met him, he was a pretty like, like an extreme leftist. Like, he actually taught me some things that I thought that I still think are pretty interesting about what the role of the state is, or abolishing the state and stuff like that. But now he's kind of like gone into this weird place, and I'm like, China is doing so much better at controlling this because they put their foot down and they do extensive contact tracing and they do quarantining and stuff like this. And so, like, you know, you look at the United States, who's just obviously, like we were saying at the beginning, they're doing the worst at it. But, you know, this person's like, well, they invented it in the first place. I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know about that. But yeah, so it's just interesting. There's a lot of considerations, I think, talking about it. But yeah, like you said, that could be a thing for a whole nother, let me just say that again to make all the grammarians' heads explode.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you teaching, having taught English and teaching English over there, and I with my, you know, English teaching background and stuff, like I'm way more, I think the more you learn about language, if you are actually somebody who's like really interested in it, like the less of a prescriptivist people tend to become, and the more of like, you know, language just is what it is, and there aren't shouldn't be really rules beyond just that which like limits communication effectively. Right.
It's like the philosophy of it.
I guess we can another time have like more, maybe I'll like, you know, at some point, maybe if I'm like doing research on a video where I talk about China or something like that, like I can come up with a few bullet points for like us to, you know, talk about in the future.
Tap me in then.
Hell yeah. So I guess I have like sort of a set of like generic questions, and, you know, you can sort of like answer these however you, I want to be mindful of your time also. Like, do you have like a hard out at a certain time?
Nah, it's all right. I have, as a teacher, I have a lot of grading and planning to do that I've put off this entire break, and I'm hoping to make a dent today on New Year's Eve. But we'll see. But no, the short answer is not really.
Okay, well, we'll, I guess like once we hit like an hour, I'll kind of like try to do like speed round stuff. So to give us a little bit of breathing room before I, you know, ask you those questions, which usually I start the podcast off asking people like, you know, where are you from and how do you how's that like informed your politics and stuff? But obviously we're from the same place. Were you born in Georgia, like born and raised?
Yeah, I was. I was born in Gainesville, Georgia. And then I was raised, I think when I was really young in more like in the Gwinnett area, but then when I was still pretty young, my dad moved us up to North Georgia, like in Young Harris, actually. So I kind of grew up in the mountains, and then did high school in North Carolina, just over the state line. And then, and then college in Georgia, basically. So yeah, you could say born and raised.
That's cool. Yeah. So I imagine you kind of have a similar, were your parents liberals, Republicans? How would you classify them?
They were always like kind of Christian conservative. And now, especially my dad's side of the family, like being a Christian conservative has, for some people, shifted into a crazy place. And that's where, unfortunately, I see some of my dad's side of the family at now. Super sad. But yeah, that's, but obviously there's been enough distance between me and that, you know, since the age of 16, when I was like, oh, but physics, you know, and kind of like distanced myself from that stuff.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people who got into countercultural stuff or, you know, politics that are not mainstream or whatever, like a lot of that for me initially, I hate to say it was a reaction against, you know, my environment and stuff, but, you know, growing up in the Northeast Georgia mountains, like, and always having, you know, just always kind of wanting to be an individual and,
right.
I definitely, you know, some getting into punk rock and stuff as a teenager was like a huge part of it, you know, getting introduced to leftist politics and stuff for me. But, you know, and then I guess getting more into like folk music and stuff like that and introduced to more like the labor oriented side of it. But, you know, so, but yeah, that's usually I'll ask something about that, but maybe we can, you know, get into that stuff another time, because now I want to ask you about your TEDx talk. So I'll link that in the description of this episode and everything, but I know the audio is not awesome on that. And I watched it like a week or two ago, and so there's some stuff that I was like kind of missing. Can you maybe, like, if you can remember, give like a little synopsis of what it was you
I tried to find my written transcript, and I don't know which computer or which hard drive it's on, so I couldn't find my original transcript for it, but I just looked at the video for a few minutes to kind of remember. So this was a TEDx event where we had a topic generally related to global culture, or like multiculturalism and globalism or something like that. So it had to do with like culture and global interconnectedness or something. And at first I had, no kind of thoughts or interests, but one of my friends was like, "Oh, you should talk about DJing." So I was like, oh my God, I could actually. So what I basically talked about was, which is a huge passion for me. So I tried to keep it kind of like middle of the road as far as how entry level it is versus how detailed it was. But I talked about the history of electronic music, basically. And there's a bigger thesis in there about how kind of like multiculturalism and globalism kind of gave rise to it. And then how what electronic music has become today is a kind of a powerful example of how something that is kind of like, broad and global and, appeals pretty seamlessly, and how it's like infiltrated pop culture or something like that. So yeah, it's a bit about like the history of electronic music, and then how it kind of became a global phenomenon today.
Okay. And in what ways would you say that, if at all, which seems like this was kind of, part of your thesis in the TEDx talk, was or I'll call it a TED talk, and it sounds cooler, right? But I mean, I've never done either kind. So this idea of like how electronic music brings different cultural influences together. And would you say that like in any sort of tangible way you've maybe observed it being like a bridge among different cultures and ways for people to connect?
Yeah. There's actually some points. So I'll talk about one point from that I actually gave in that talk, and then I'll talk about a different one. So in one way, I thought this was really interesting, and you probably know a little bit about this, but in the division of Germany and Berlin, when it was split into East and West Germany, and Berlin itself was divided, when they created, I guess, going back to like in the 70s, when kind of like that style of like psychedelic cosmic music or krautrock started, like that was I think I'll say that it has a connection to electronic music because of just their manipulation of sound to produce like psychedelia. And they were, even things like Kraftwerk was part of that movement, using electronic drums or that motoric sound and stuff like that. As I've read and understand, that was a response to the alienation that they felt like post-war and in divided Germany and stuff like that. So I think that in Germany at that time, there was definitely a use of music and kind of experimental or electronic music as a means to kind of like reunify and clarify or something. It created like a scene that definitely was supposed to kind of like, I don't know, unify an idea of what it felt like to be from that time and place. And then going forward, the exact example that I think is so interesting is actually after the unification, after the Berlin Wall came down and reunification, in the early 90s, techno is when, that was when like techno music actually started to really get a foothold. And of course, it was invented in Detroit, in America, but it became really popular in Germany. And I think I actually gave a quote in the talk. I forget who said it, but one of those major like German techno DJs was saying that at that time, it actually was a unifying force. Like when there were these two kind of separated like cultures or there was an artificial division there. That scene actually became a really kind of like positive way for them to reconnect. and come together. Cause I mean, you know what it's like, it's a techno rave, like everybody goes regardless of who you are, and you have a out of body experience and it's fun and whatever. So that was, I think, a really interesting example about that in particular. I think now, one example. So as a DJ, I've noticed, and this is kind of a blind spot for me as far as the kind of music I DJ, but I've noticed that there's a very strong, and I can't really speak as an expert about this, but what I would generally call like reggaeton or moombahton, that kind of music has kind of like united this, because I noticed it first in India like 8 years ago or something when I was DJing in clubs there. And I was just like, man, the kind of like hip hop and house music that I'm playing doesn't really pop off nearly as hard as like moombahton stuff. And that rhythm style has basically united like a kind of like Pan-African, Caribbean, Latin American, Indian, like there's this entire like swath in roughly the Southern Hemisphere, central, equatorial and Southern Hemisphere. I feel like, that is all unified by this one drum beat, just this like boom, da-dum, da-dum, you know, like moombahton thing. And I don't DJ it enough. I don't care for that kind of music, but I can physically see how much of a unifier that is, like in clubs. Yeah, all across those areas, you know, that I mentioned, and everywhere. It just seems to be like the magic, you know, sexy rhythm that seems to be kind of like from and across all of those cultures, and really unifies people. That's a kind of more current example, I think.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, and also like you know, I think there's something unique about, well, not unique about electronic music, but there's another that's a grammar or diction point, I guess, that I always like fuck up on, is that well, I'll push back against it too, the idea that unique doesn't need a modifier because it means like one of a kind, so something can't be very unique. But I don't know, I think something can be unique in several different ways, and another thing can be unique in more ways than that. So I think there can be a modifier anyway. But the weirdly enough, there was this, I saw a clip when I was like just looking up stuff to make fun of this dude, this Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy. Have you seen how he's like, I know about him because I read his book when I was in high school, and it was really, really funny for like the first 90% of the book. And then the last chapter, he was like, all right, guys, I want to get serious. And then started talking about very crackpot stuff. So I've known for a long time that he's like actually really crazy. Yeah, he's a character. He's something. My girlfriend always has like this sixth sense about people. Like she just saw like a just little clip of him speaking. She had no idea who he was. And she was like, that guy is a fucking weirdo and he freaks me out. But he had this little anecdote when I was watching one of his weirdo like live streams, where he was talking about music being like this. I'll have to see if I can find where he's like maybe fleshed it out more. But like, I thought it would be kind of interesting to be like, you know, Scott Adams actually said something that was kind of insightful and interesting, basically about how like music is this unifying force. And that sounds kind of cheesy the way I'm putting it, but he said some interesting stuff about it. But, you know, electronic music is generally, even when it has words, the words are not like at the forefront of it mostly. It's probably something that prevents it from being like one of my favorite genres of music, but also like as a musician, I really appreciate about it because there's just so much interesting stuff you can do with electronic music that you can't do with analog music. Right. But so, you know, the fact that it doesn't have generally, or at least doesn't focus on words and vocals, do you think that has something to do with like, you know, maybe it transcends different borders and cultures? Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's actually a super interesting point, the fact that in electronic music, at least the major genres, when I think about electronic music, the words aren't even a thing. Like, I think personally, like I realized like I just gave up, like, I don't know, like 6 years ago or something. I was like,
I can admit that I no longer listen to varied music. I no longer have an open mind. I did that old man thing where I was like, I just listened to like, electronic music without words. And I think part of it was because I was like cynical about what pop music has turned into. And when, there's probably an argument to say that it always was like this, but I kind of got tired of hearing songs on the radio in America that were about like abandonment and just like giving up and stuff like that. Like I was like tired of hearing songs on the radio that were like, it doesn't matter if I'm broke, I'm just gonna go to the club and dance. And it's like, no, you need to take back the means or whatever. So like, yeah, part of it was that I got tired of lyrics in general. Like they got to a point where I was hardly like able to think that even like indie rock singing, I was just like, it's all just cheesy. So I was attracted to there not being words just because it's more of like a mood or it's propulsive, right? Like the beat in electronic music is just like a propulsive kind of vibe. And so that was kind of my thinking about it. Like, I don't know what it is about my brain. I'd just rather tune out, and just have a house beat going or something. But it's got to be something. I mean, it's beyond language as far as like, multicultural like appeal. Like it's outside of language. It's just about that beat. And I think that actually is, now I'm looping back, part of the point I made in my TED Talk was that like, as long as drums have been used in instrumental music, there was something about the beat. And so like electronic music is probably still just tapping into that exact same thing, or heartbeats even. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, and a lot of like poetry, talking about like meter and stuff, like a lot of that is like modeled off of just like heartbeat, I think the like iambic pentameter, like an iamb is yep, that's, yeah, exactly. That's really interesting. I mean, so you've gone fully electronic? I mean, I listen to electronic music to, I mean, I make some electronic music I mostly. It's very good. Well, thank you. I mean, it's supposed to. I love all your, and they're like throwaways too. Like I'm interjecting here, but like, yeah, all your like Hoss Bossman throwaways are like better than anything I could ever make. And I'm just like, damn it, this is amazing. Oh, dude, that is very, very flattering coming from you. Cause like, I really love, like whenever you post shit on Facebook is usually where I see it. Like I always listen to like, the new stuff that you post, and it's, I appreciate that in kind. You and, my girlfriend's sister's fiance now, he is really into electronic music and makes stuff, and I'm always like, I'll make something and it's like I just use GarageBand to make everything, and like I'll be like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool, but then I listen to something you guys make and I'm always like, maybe it's just because you're using different programs or something, but it's like I could never like achieve that. Yeah. I don't know how you achieve that sound. Yeah. And the stuff, what I do is like, it's all just like Apple loops that I just drag together, and sort of, on the point of the, how just different cultures or, music from different cultures can mesh together. Like that's usually when it like winds up being really fun, is like, there will be like some kind of, Middle Eastern type, like some disparate kind of elements in it from, like bring all those together. And it's like, electronic music, because all music has a beat and in some way, like you can take music from like anywhere in the world and just put it all on top of each other and tweak it a little bit, and then it just it flows together. I'll go back to what you had started to ask though. Like I won't say like I 100% only listen to electronic music. No way. Like I have a huge record collection too, right? I collect lots of records. Probably as I'm looking at these shelves, like half of it is actually just like house and electronic stuff, but there's also lots of classic rock. And to speak about, like, because when people get me presents or in Christmas presents and stuff, like, I always just want records. So for instance, this year, one thing that I was really asking for was, I don't know if you ever listened to this band Atlas Sound. It's the guy from Deer Hunter, Bradford Cox, right? So it was his solo project, and their first album is one that I've always loved. It's amazing. It's an indie album, I would roughly call it. It's called Logos by Atlas Sound. So anyway, and it's got singing like the whole way through, pretty much. Interesting singing, but that's like an indie record, and I wanted that one really bad, and I got that one for Christmas. I also got like Another Green World, that Brian Eno record.
Oh, I've not really listened to much Brian Eno stuff. He's from?
He's been in so many scenes, like, so people that are listening are gonna like flip out when I mischaracterize this, but I want to say he has kind of like some tangential connections to everybody from the Velvet Underground and John Cale to David Bowie. And I mean, his production was, I think, really big, but himself, he got famous for like some ambient stuff. Like he may have, some say, invented ambient music with his music for airports and stuff like that. But Another Green World is an interesting one, because it's like in between. I think Roxy Music might be the name of the band that he was in before. It's in between that kind of glam rock and ambient stuff. But this record, I hadn't given a good listen to, even though I've had a digital copy forever, but I actually got the record for Christmas and listened to it, and it's really incredible. There's a little bit of like glam rock, and there's some songs on there that I'm like, so this came out in 1975, and there's a song in there that sounds like post rock, like it sounds like Explosions in the Sky or something, but like nothing you would have heard until like at least the year 2000, which I thought was pretty wild. So yeah, it's got a little bit of ambient, a little bit of everything, but interesting stuff. So the point of that is that like I still listen to and collect lots of different kind of music, but I have to admit that most of the time, like, I shuffle out the music on my iPhone to listen to the offline kind of my music stuff. And it's a good half or more like electronic, whether it's like, instrumental hip hop beats or house or techno or whatever. I tend to skew that way, but not entirely.
That's like me with punk music since I was, like 12 years old. It's like still to this day, I'm still listening to some of the records I was listening to in like 5th and 6th grade.
Yep.
And I sometimes a little bit like, I don't know, I wouldn't say like embarrassed about it, but it's like, I mean, if people really knew, like, I'm a musician, and the just lack of variety in what because I just like, I'm addicted to just loud, hard pan, distorted guitars, crunchy palm muting, and like just aesthetically, or sonically, that aspect is like, I mean, it really is like, hitting a drug or like getting a nicotine fix or something.
I get it.
But so much of that stuff is political, and that's what really drew me to it originally, and has like really kept me interested in it. And I go through phases, I guess, of not listening to as much political stuff, but especially the past 4 or 5 years, I've gotten way back into political music. Do you? Right. I know back at Young Harris, the Zeta Pi crew and all the, like, there's a lot of jam band music that group was into, and like also some like folk stuff, and very big Bob Dylan, Widespread Panic, Grateful Dead, also probably Widespread Panic, that kind of stuff. Like, is what in that realm, is there anything that you're kind of still listening to that you would call political in some way?
I never really listened. I'm not a jam band guy at all. I've never been able to get into it, like, but my one kind of point is that I enjoy the Grateful Dead probably, but of what you just mentioned, actually, I think Bob Dylan's the most salient. Like, I still listen to Bob Dylan all the time, and I kind of had this spring I read I think my dad gave me a present, like it was just like a copy of like the Life magazine thing about Bob Dylan's life or whatever. So like I read that this spring and stuff, and I don't know. It's interesting because, like, as much as you could say that he was a very political kind of artist. I think really the impression I got, especially from this thing that I read this year, was that he was really just gaming it. Like he was more of a folk like trickster, or if anything, like he knew what he was doing. He created a mythos and a personality, and he did the political folk thing because he thought that's what would be the most impactful. And damn him for being so good at it. Like, it just happened to be like really poignant what he did. But I'd say that's like the one that comes to mind is just Bob Dylan. Still listen to him all the time.
Yeah, I guess if you're not as geared toward lyrical stuff, it's kind of in I guess obvious ways difficult for electronic or instrumental music to be political in any way. Or do you think that's possible for wordless music to be political?
I was thinking about this before we actually met up to talk. I was trying to think about, I was like, I know I'm not going to be able to plan for anything, but I thought about this a little bit, and I can say that there is something that it does, but it's almost like a little bit more high-minded than just politics. Like, I think that there's a arena for actual like philosophic considerations to be presented in electronic music for sure. And what I was thinking about was the music of a couple different, you'd probably call it more like drone or experimental electronic musicians. But one is this guy called The Caretaker. I don't know if you've ever listened to or checked out. The Caretaker is a good example. But there's others, like William Pazinski is like a post-classical, like he got famous for doing the piece that was like, disintegration tape loops, where it was when 9/11 was happening. He was like recording these like classical loops that the tapes were like breaking down. So it's like an hour long, but the music's like gradually disintegrating as it gets recorded. I think that's called the disintegration loops or disintegration tapes or something like that. But The Caretaker is a good example where, and what I think both of these guys have in common is they really are deconstructionists. They'll just get like a fragment of something that sounds like it was like a phonogram or phonograph like radio from the 40s as it's like dying its last turn. It's just like gasping out a little crackle of static, and then just kind of like deconstructing that and looping it ad infinitum to provoke more questions about art and about memory and reproduction and what's the word, the Baudrillard thing, like the representations. What am I talking about?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
That thing. Someone will fill it in.
Okay, yeah, no.
It's like a representation of something that was real, but then a representation of that representation to the point where it no longer resembles anything in reality anymore. Stuff like that. So I guess my thought is that there's definitely some artists who are using electronic manipulation of sound and electronic music in ways to provoke kind of like bigger philosophic ideas, and where they can intersect with politics is there's probably stuff there, but I think more about the kind of these bigger ideas that almost like supersede. Like I'll give one example. So this guy I mentioned, The Caretaker, he made an album, I think in the past year or two. It's his more recent one, and I can't remember the name of it, but if you look this up, it'll pop up immediately. It is a album that was designed to replicate the experience of basically developing Alzheimer's. And so it's a haunting, like really hard listen. It starts out one way and then just gradually, and I think it's really extremely long. Like it's one of those like multi-hour compositions or something, but it just changes, and it like sticks with you and affects you for long after you listen to it. I don't know, without even having known that was the theme or the topic, really has an impact in that way. I forget the name of that one, but you could find it, The Caretaker. So there's a lot of philosophic ideas that I think can get presented in this kind of music. And certainly there have to be ones that are political as well, but those come to mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, like in the same way, perhaps fittingly is hard to put into words, especially when when a work of art is like trying to wrestle with or embody like some big ideas. Usually the best, and I'll ask people like, do you like political art, or do you like music that's like has political lyrics or whatever? And a lot of people are just like, it's too preachy, or just political music, like the explicitly political music can be just like kind of annoying to some people. And I definitely get that. Like there's a lot of like ham-fisted, like not good political music, but
message over the art, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. But I think in sort of along the same lines of what you're saying, it's like how I'll talk to him like I remember my girlfriend's dad, but I've heard so many people say this. I just can remember talking to him about it, how he was just sort of like I don't get this like a jar of piss in an art museum or whatever, right? And it's like which I totally that's supposed to be your first reaction to it. I think like that's not art, but it's supposed to provoke a question of like, well, what is art? And in that way, it's like the jar of piss in the art museum is successful, right?
It did its job. Yeah,
it got you to say I don't get it, and that's I guess kind of the point. And also this guy interviewed Chris Crofton, we talked about Prince, and I'd like to talk to more people about Prince and how like it's like he didn't have to sing about like specific political issues to be political, because just the mere fact of him being Prince at the time when he came along, and David Bowie is a similar thing where it's like blurring, coming out and showing like this is a way to be. You can be like this. You don't have to be the way that like society tells you to. I think like similarly, I was with Halloween recently. I was like trying to talk a little bit high-mindedly, mainly for self-serving purposes, just because I'm trying to tie everything back to politics in some way, or social issues or something. But like, how some like a really like gory movie or something like that, or just something that's like really pushes boundaries, can in its own way, like it just sort of like gives us another way, like pushes the boundaries of what's acceptable, that window of what you can talk about and portray, I guess.
Yeah, I bookmarked or otherwise like listened to save for later, like your list of films or horror films or whatever, and was like, I got to watch these at some point.
Oh yeah, I did like a top 10 list of I don't know if y'all have like what streaming apps y'all have in China these days, but like I did, Shudder is this really I've always loved horror movies, but the past like decade or so, I've just gotten like more and more into, especially like 80s and, special effects, or, like good practical effects movies, and, the gorier, the more fun it is. But
and I think you're onto something about that, that aspect, that they, in the same way that like punk music, that they were pushing a boundary, and that there's actually something deeper going on than just like pure shock value or whatever in them.
Yeah, it's like pure shock value can be very annoying, but it's like it depends on like where it comes from, I guess. So we've been going for a while here, and I'll let's see. I'm just going to go through these generic questions real quick and just see if. Let me.
I thought of one when we were talking. One more example of political electronic music. I can't believe I didn't think of this. I saw this guy live. His name is Matthew Herbert. He's a British artist, and he used to be in the early 2000s or maybe even earlier, just like a house maestro. Like he made fun, great dance music. He has different aliases, Herbert or Matthew Herbert. But he has this new one, and I saw them live about 2 years ago at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland, back when we could travel and do awesome things. He has this band called Matthew Herbert's Big Band, or Matthew Herbert's Big Brexit Band, or something like that. It was like too many B's, like Brexit Big Band, Herbert something. And he actually did a show that I saw, and he has an album, I think, of this stuff where he uses a big band and he does like kind of live electronic manipulation. But the whole thing is roughly a response to Brexit and has really crazy stuff in it. Like I've heard that the album has even more crazy stuff. Like it just has like some footsteps and sirens and it's, I don't know. And then when you read about the background of the stories, it's all really kind of crazy stuff. But I remember like all the members of the orchestra or the band, like pulled out copies of the Daily Mail, which I wouldn't know too much about, but he was explaining is like basically the Fox News of Britain. It's like the really bad, the Daily Hate Mail. And they were just like ripping it up on beat or whatever with their sheet music. And then he was sampling that. And he did like a live referendum. He was like, we're gonna do a referendum on this again. Do you guys think, to the audience, he was like, do you guys think that Britain should leave the EU? And everybody was like, no. And then he sampled that and then turned it into this whole thing. So that's a good example of someone who is in a very high-minded way, kind of bridging that philosophic and political gap of making electronic music in combination with acoustical like big band stuff to make political content. But yeah, that's actually a good example to check out as Matthew Herbert's Big Band or Big Brexit Band or whatever.
Something along those. Example. Yeah, I'll see if whenever I'm like going through and editing this or whatever, which I don't think I'll have to edit out much, but like
maybe you can push that one back.
Then, or yeah, I mean maybe I'll rearrange, but I'll see all the stuff that you're like trying to think of the exact name of. I'll like get those and either insert them in or like just say them in the intro or outro or something.
Cool.
And but yeah, so one thing other than like the intersection of politics and art that I've wanted to talk about a lot on this show. Another thing is like, which I think is pretty closely connected, is like effective political communication. Can you, I mean, either what do you think is the key to effective political communication, or, have you seen something, even like, a YouTube video or anything like that recently, heard a piece of music, whatever it is that you think was effective at communicating either a political, social, philosophical idea?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I have to preface that I'm not good at this, right? Like I know what one is supposed to do, but I'm not good at it most of the time because I drink too much and then just start hollering. But I do know a few things. So one is that the biggest tool, and it'll be almost cliche at this point to say, but is just listening, to just listen and let people say as much as they want. And this is actually a teacher move. So I did being at this really good school, I've had the opportunity to do lots and lots of really cool professional development. And one of the things I did in the last year or two that was really kind of, powerful is this training called cognitive coaching. And I didn't buy into it at all because I'm like, I hate pseudo psychology crap because it's like, oh, it's a way of listening and communicating. And I'm just like, I fucking hate that crap. But it's actually really interesting. And it's basically just tips to be able to listen to people and ask them questions to guide their thinking, like their own thinking. So as I've had political discussions with people, and let them, vent their whatever point of view that I don't agree with or whatever, to just listen, paraphrase what they're saying, and drive down to like, what do you think is really important or something like that, right? Like, so when Trump and Biden did their first debate back a couple months ago or whatever, we had a watching party here at a bar that was my wife actually organized with the Democrats Abroad thing. But we had a watch party at a bar, and it was a really great opportunity where there was a bunch of these Trump supporters that you'd be like, why? What are you doing here? You live overseas and you're a crazy Trump supporter. But it was a great opportunity to practice this stuff. So the biggest thing is just to like listen. And as people are explaining their reasonings and their points, like you can generally drive it down and just be like, so you care about human life. Like, is that, and you get it down to these essential things. And then when you have that established, there's some maneuvering to just be like, well, then what is the best way to go about this or something like that. And, you know, when you're talking to a libertarian that's like, there shouldn't be anything, like everything should just be like, you know, private companies paving the roads and stuff. And it's like, is that really the best way? And you can get into minutia, but when you kind of Socratically question to get down to what their firmest kind of ideals are, you usually have more to work with than just starting out of the gate by, like, you know, yelling about how they're intrinsically racist or, you know, whatever. Like, so that's the biggest thing I would say.
Yeah, as difficult as that can be to whenever you do have like kind of a conclusion in mind, it's you know for your own critical thinking and everything as well. But yeah, it's sort of a Socratic method type deal, right? Like I'll find that if somebody doesn't know what they're talking about and they think that they do, one of the best ways to like just get them to realize that is to just like start asking them questions about it. And a lot of times like you kind of do the work for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It can be tough too if they arrive at something that is pretty like abrasive, but they don't see it. Like, for instance, I had to talk to my dad like maybe over a year ago now, and he's turned crazy. Like it's really sad. It's like he's been Fox Newsified or Rush Limbaughfied or whatever, and he has a totally different personality. And anyway, I just did this with him. I just let him talk and didn't say anything and just ask questions. And at the end of it, I'm like, so you want a religious based society? Basically it's like, cause he's saying Christian values and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you want a government that is run by religion? And he's like, yep. And I'm just like, I'm going to let that sit there and to see if you realize that any problem with that, or if I have to just be like Saudi Arabia, is that what like, right. So it can be tough if they walk into it, but don't see it too, which can be a problem these days.
Yeah. And, bringing up something like Saudi Arabia and how it's like, the thing that a lot of conservatives talk about being so bad about like, majority Muslim countries is that
right.
Like, it boils down to, it's like you're talking about conservative Islam is what you don't like. And how do you, can you see a connection between like your conservative Christianity and conservatism in general and
exactly.
like the stuff that you criticize about that in that context? Yeah. But okay, well, I guess I'll just ask you one more question and then you can like tell people where to find you and stuff.
Okay.
So this could be an interesting one considering you're not in the United States. If you could snap your fingers and magically, this is a cheesy question, but it can be fun. And
fun stuff.
Magically change like one thing about the U.S. government, what would it be? Like, what do you think might have the best ripple effect, or just most important issue?
Oh man, yeah, it's easy. Actually, that's pretty easy. I would just have Bernie Sanders either be elected right now or back in 2016 have Bernie Sanders have been elected. I don't know if people could really appreciate how important he would have been if he was elected in 2016. But I think it would be worth it. I think it would have been worth it to avoid all of this mess. Yeah, I think even to this day, I'm like, people hate Bernie bros or whatever, but I can't help but think that he's still to this day doing the most important work. I think he's in the Senate right now filibustering as we're speaking to try to get $2,000 paychecks to people. Like, that would be the first step I would take to trying to like fix the mess of everything that's wrong over there. And as well, a big problem I have is being overseas. And I've been thinking about this more lately, is just how pitiable America looks to the rest of the world. Because I've been overseas for long enough that like it's been this way for a long time, but it's like worse than ever right now. Like people overseas just, I don't know what they think, but America is not looking good to the rest of the world. So.
Yeah, in so many ways. And yeah, like it has been that way for a long time, maybe always, but or in the modern era anyway. But like, it's just so hard for people to see like in the United States, for people to see like an outsider's perspective, which it seems like a lot of people in other countries are much better at that sort of thing. But yeah, that, you know, having Bernie in office would certainly be a lot better. You know, I guess my hope, the silver lining in the whole Trump thing, which, I mean, obviously it led to hundreds of thousands of people dying, and that maybe shouldn't find any silver lining in that, but like hopefully it will lead to more. The one good thing about Trump, I think, is that he sort of just destroys the like what we were saying earlier. You know, he broke down a barrier as to like what people are willing to accept as being like outside the norm of a politician.
Yeah.
I think hopefully that will not turn out to be the very bad thing that could, like, the direction that could go in, like further, you know, worse, smarter Trump, more competent Trump, which would be fucking awful and terrifying. But like, you know, somebody like Bernie Sanders, this sort of not super you know, pandery old Jewish guy with the crazy hair, like seems like a little bit more feasible as opposed to like before Trump was, you know, elected. So I don't know. Just
just a bunch of like senator haircuts and, you know, presentable TV faces or whatever.
And I don't know. Hopefully things will be more people's minds will be open to new ways of doing things in the far other direction from where, you know, Trump took us. But
I feel that it is this will be my cryptic leftist closing, is just that I'll say that I feel that it is necessary. I feel that it is no longer, it is necessary that things radically change.
Same here. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell people out there in the information superhighway where they can find your music, and if you want people to follow on Twitter or whatever it is?
Yep. First of all, big thanks to you, Hoss Bossman. It is awesome to have gotten to catch up and chat, like you said, since we've been old friends, and I've been loving what you're doing with Breadsheet and Hoss Bossman and everything for a while. So I tend to run under the moniker of DJ Boring. That's right, boring, subverting expectations. There's a slight problem with this. I could go on about this for a long time, but in the past couple years, there's this other DJ Boring that's popped up that stole my name knowingly, and he's made a pretty big impact for himself. So watch out that you're not getting the wrong DJ Boring. On Facebook, I have a facebook.com/DJ Boring. I think my Instagram, DJ Boring, Twitter, DJ Boring Songs, and and my music is, getting posted on all those places. But djboring.bandcamp.com is where my original compositions, my beats that I make and whatnot go. And I think I also have like a MIXCLOUD. I don't really use SoundCloud that much because it's awful, in my opinion. But BANDCAMP, MIXCLOUD, all that stuff, DJ Boring. And then I won't say that I know who this is, but there is an interesting account on Twitter called Dark Loud, LLOUD. Not professing to have any connection to that account, but that may or may not be something that will say things with no filter because it's not connected to DJ Boring or me in any way. But Dark LLOUD. DARKLLOUD on Twitter as well is another account to watch. So
okay, well, that's very nice of you to give a shout out to a third party there. I'm sure Dark Loud will appreciate.
They just say things with no filter. It's wild, people. It's wild.
Fuck yeah, punk as fuck.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I guess I'll let you get on with your grading and whatnot, and good luck as the new school year starts, and good luck with all the the pandemic stuff. Hopefully they'll get that under control soon. Yeah, same to you, of course. Good luck with everything. Good to chat, Hoss. Good to chat, Lloyd. Have a wonderful day. All right, man. Peace. Bye. Immense deja vu. So you're gonna kill your children for communism. You're gonna kill your children for communism. That is all unified by this one
It's like it's built on a bunch of like Indian graves or something that is all unified by this one magic, sexy rhythm. Sexy rhythm. It's like it's built on a bunch of like Indian graves or something. They're gonna kill your children for communism. They're gonna kill your children for communism.
Alrighty, folks, that is it for this week. Again, come back next week for my amazing interview with Chris Freeman of Pansy Division. That's next Friday morning, just like today. Find Lloyd or DJ Boring's music at bandcamp.com or at Bandcamp at djboring.bandcamp.com. MIXCLOUD at mixcloud.com/djboring. Facebook.com/djboring. Twitter.com/djboringsongs, Instagram.com/djboring, SoundCloud.com/djboringsongs. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at Hoss_Bossman. Please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at bit.ly/HossTube and find all that stuff at www.hoss.fun. That's it for me, folks. Now stick around as we ride out on DJ Boring's hella rad song. Haven't decided which one it is yet. So, Robot Voice, introduce that song.
Autumn Mechanic.
I've been Hoss Bossman. Please rate and review this podcast. Share this podcast. Tell your friends. All that jizzity jazz. I love you all. Stay safe. Wear a mask. And may you forever worship yourself as a god. Is that a keeper, that sign off? I think I said that last week. Okay, I guess this song is already started. Bye!